everyone, it's Michelle and welcome back to the Royal Daily Tea. So today was really big news in the world of Meghan Markle. She finally released the very first episode of her Archetype podcast. This one was called The Misconceptions of Ambition, where she interviewed her bestie Serena Williams, and they talk about how ambition or ambitious women, that's considered a dirty word, and how labels hold back women. So again, this is very much a feminist podcast, which is pretty much all Meghan Markle has to talk about. All she has in her wheelhouse is her feminist issues. Now, I did go into this with an open mind, trying to be 100% objective and unbiased. I know a lot of people were like, why are you watching the podcast? Why are you listening to it? You're giving her press. I'm actually not giving her press because it's already out there. But as a royal commentator, I think it is important for me to do the proper research. And that means actually listening to the podcast so I can give you my full review and analysis. And let me tell y'all, there is some little nuggets in there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and make sure to leave me your comments, guys, down below and let me know what you think of the brand new Archetype podcast. So the very first thing I noticed was the photograph that they released of Meghan's first episode, Archetype, The Misconception of Ambition. Of course, it said, with Meghan. She definitely did not use her title, the Duchess of Sussex, which to me means she's really trying to kind of separate herself now from her title when it comes to her political feminist ambitions. I believe she's trying to maybe set herself apart now for her future, perhaps to get into politics. Now, I personally do not believe she's getting into politics because I think that's laughable. But again, it could happen because this woman does not embarrass. She does not embarrass. She doesn't know how to read a room. And she believes all her positive press. So who knows? Maybe her inflated ego and self-relevance could make her feel like she could be Senator Markle. I don't know. I just find the whole thing comical. But again, we've had worse in the White House, so who knows? So the very first story that Meghan leads with, y'all, is of course the Procter & Gamble letter. I don't know why this woman is still beating the story around. She has beaten it to death as the 11-year-old feminist who was offended by the male classmate saying that women belong in the kitchen. And she didn't like the fact that this dishwashing commercial said that women were the ones washing dishes, where she sits down and famously writes that letter and sends it off. And 3 months later, Procter & Gamble changed their marketing campaign based on her letter to say the word people versus women. Now, what she fails to mention is how her daddy played a huge part of her upbringing and, of course, her confidence. It was her father who made her believe that she could do anything. It was her father and her father's connections with television that got her that interview where they talked about her writing that letter for Procter & Gamble. It's funny how she never mentions how her father helped her get all those connections. But again, no one cares about Daddy. Then she goes into her 6 years at the Catholic Middle School and High School for Immaculate Heart, the very, very exclusive and expensive private school that once again her daddy paid for. So she could go to school, and she told a story about the nuns and how the nuns didn't want to wear the habits anymore, and they stood up for themselves, and that proved that women could do anything, and that this helped breed her to be the feminist that she is today. Again, skipping over the story of how she got to the school, how her black mother was nowhere around, and she was raised by her white father, who spent his lottery winnings to provide a very nice life for her at private schools and trips to London, etc. But yeah, we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about how wonderful Meghan is. Again, very interesting how she's omitting a lot of stuff here. Then she does the most hilarious thing. So she's introducing her little friend Serena. And of course, little H comes in and they do a British accent. Hello, Harry. Hello, Harry. You know, stupid. And the funniest story I've ever heard in my entire life was how Meghan says to Harry, remember that story of how they said Meghan is straight out of Compton and how I've never lived at Compton in my whole life, and they must have mixed me up with Serena Williams because everyone used to mix me up with Serena Williams. Never did that happen in a million years. Would anyone ever confuse Meghan Markle with Serena Williams? First of all, Serena Williams has been a celebrity for a lot longer than you have, sweetheart. And y'all don't look alike, okay? No one even knew you were black. You do not look like Serena Williams. Nobody in a million years, sweetheart, would ever confuse the two of you. People barely knew who you were until you married Harry. Nobody confused you. And then she made the whole thing, well, my girl's from Compton, my best friend's from Compton. And they did the whole spiel of how Serena Williams was proud to be from Compton. So the fact that she brought up the straight out of Compton and tried to make herself with Serena Williams, and that people confuse her all the time on the street. Now, I will say they picked some really good music for the podcast, some women empowerment music. Whoever produced the show did a really nice job with the graphics, the picture of Meghan, the music. They did have a lot of clips, you know, of Meghan talking as a child, of Serena. They really did a good job of mixing in the audio. Again, that had nothing to do with Meghan. That was for her team. They did a really good job on that aspect. But I have to be honest with you. Most of it was Serena Williams gushing about herself and how she made the hard decision to give up tennis to be at home with her daughter. Now, I understand that she's a professional athlete, that she's worked hard her entire life, and that is on her, and that's a wonderful thing. However, I felt like they were trying to pull on people's heartstrings a little bit, and it's like it didn't work because she's a multimillionaire, lives a very privileged life. She's retiring to stay home with her daughter, but most working women cannot do that, especially mothers. There are many women who work 2 or 3 jobs. They're broke. They're just trying to put food on the table. And here's little Serena Williams. Oh, I'm just crying because I want to spend home with my daughter. It's like, cry me a river. You play tennis for a living. Again, that's not a bad way to earn a living. I'm sure a lot of people wish they could do football or basketball or tennis, but most of us don't have those types of jobs. Again, it was kind of 2 elitist women crying in their golden teacups, trying to make us feel sorry for them, and it just didn't work for me. I didn't feel sorry for her. So the whole big announcement was Serena Williams told Meghan first that she was retiring from tennis. Like literally Meghan brought that up 20 times in the podcast. Nobody cares. It's a big secret. Do people really care that she's retiring from tennis? Is it a huge deal? I don't think so. Nobody cares. I'm sorry, I'm not a huge tennis fan. Maybe people are devastated, but I just don't feel like it was that big of a deal. She's 40 years old. At some point, she's going to have to retire and give it up. So they made it seem like it was the hardest decision and that she had to sit there and talk with H and how H counseled her about her big decision in life. The hardest thing is to walk away because Harry had to give her that life advice. I'm not even kidding you guys. That was literally part of the podcast, was how Harry helped her make that decision. Ugh. And how Meghan knew the secret for months and months before she finally revealed it because they're such good friends. And Meghan would never break her confidence. Again, it was like she was gushing over Serena, and Serena was gushing over Meghan and Harry, and how she helped her with this decision to give up her life of privilege for another life of privilege. It was like, gag me a river. I'm sorry, but the heartstrings didn't work for me. Now, the main point that I guess Meghan was trying to make was that people had mislabeled her because she was ambitious. And when she got with Harry, all of a sudden ambition became a dirty word. And she never had a problem before that. But the problem is, Meghan, you're confusing ambition with being a bitch. They are 2 separate things. You are not a nice person. You cut people off, you've used people, you ghost people, you manipulate people. You have been caught lying several times to the public, a smear campaign against the royals. And let's not forget what you done to dear Daddy, the man who helped shape you into the feminist, confident woman that you are today. the man who paid for that private education at Immaculate Heart, the man who helped you write that letter to Procter and Gamble and had a film crew come in and film you, who may or may not have faked a letter from Hillary Clinton. Again, the jury is still out on this whole Procter & Gamble story. But again, he was doing everything he could to build up his daughter. I mean, the jury is still out on all of this Procter & Gamble stuff. Procter & Gamble, according to Tom Bauer, has never verified this story of them changing their marketing campaign based on 11-year-old Meghan Markle's letter. There's no evidence. It could be a coinkydink. There could have been several letters, or they could have just decided to change it on their own. But Meghan is taking full credit, again, for them changing the marketing campaign because of her letter. Tom Bauer had no evidence to corroborate the story, nor could anyone find this mythical letter from Hillary Clinton. Again, it is rumored that Thomas Markle faked it, but he did everything he could for his little girl. And he built up her ego to the point of, well, unfortunately, it blew up in his face. So, Meghan, nobody is mad at you for being ambitious. They're mad at you for being a cutthroat narcissist diva. Those are quite a few labels, but unfortunately, you fit into every single one of those boxes. Every single one. You have a history of being a horrible person, period. To tons of people. Family, friends, business associates, managers, ex-husbands, boyfriends, you name it. There's just too many people from too many places for too many years for it not to be true. I'm sorry, but that is a label you own. Period. Okay? You are a narcissist, manipulative, lying woman. Ambitious, yes. Cutthroat, yes. But those aren't good traits. Okay, so we're not mad at you because you have a goal in life. We're mad at you on how you're trying to obtain those goals. And the most hilarious part of this whole feminist game you got going on is you didn't get on the map till you married your husband. Nobody knew how to spell your name until you married Prince Harry. I'm sorry, sister, but it's the truth. I know it's hard for your feminist ears to hear, but you didn't get where you are today on your own. You got there from your daddy, from your first husband, and from your current husband. Your acting career at 36 was over. And you tell everyone, I gave everything up to marry my husband. Now here's the problem. You married into a royal institution. Now granted, it is not the greatest place for an ambitious woman to be, because it's not meant for ambitious, career-driven people. Being a part of the royal family means you're living a life of service. You are serving the people of the Commonwealth, representing the Queen and the Crown. In exchange, you get titles, you get money, you get residences, you get a wardrobe, you get security. You live a pretty nice life for free in exchange for a life of service. But you had a choice. You did not have to be a full-time working royal. They said you still could have been an actress. You still could have been ambitious. But when you married Prince Harry, you couldn't be the activist or the feminist or get into politics the way you wanted to. But you made a choice to marry him and to marry into that institution. They told you what was going to happen. So you can't be mad at them for saying, Meghan, you can't give political speeches. Meghan, you can't do this. You have to follow the rules. So again, Princess Anne has just gone on record and said, told you, nailed it. Okay? She called it. This was not the life for you. It is not for everyone. That is why Harry had a hard time finding a spouse, because anyone who married him had to give up all of their personal freedoms in order to live a life as a royal. It is not for everyone. It's not about self. It's about service. But Meghan is about self, self-worth, self-voice. Everything's about Meghan's voice. She's got to be heard. It's her voice. It's her feminism. And then she marries a royal prince and then gets mad that she can't have her way. She is a narcissist. This is like death to her. She can't handle it because her whole entire life, her daddy has given her everything she's ever wanted. So why is it going to stop at age 36? It ain't happening for Megsy. Now that she has the fame and the money, she didn't want to stop. At that point, her ambition and her self-worth got in the way of her being a royal. There was absolutely no way she could turn her back on Hollywood now, because now she has a name. Now she has fame. She has world recognition. She had no intention of being a working royal. So now she's like, well, people just didn't like me because I'm ambitious. No, they don't like you because you're a bitch. I'm sorry, but there's just not a nicer way to say it. Look what you did to your father. You literally turned your back on your dad, who was on his deathbed. And then you preach compassion. You can't just preach it and not do it. People can see it. So you teach compassion, and then you don't have any for your dad, the man who literally was there for you, who provided everything for you, your high school education, your college education, who gave you everything in life, that solid foundation, and you shit on him the minute you get famous and you marry a prince. You forget who he is. You just ditch him right at the door. Don't even let him come to the wedding. What kind of person does that? Now that you have Harry, you don't need daddy anymore. Well, people see that. People see that. So they know you're full of it. Not to mention, they've caught you in so many lies. You know, Meghan reminds me of one of those people, those Southern women who lie, and you catch them out in the lie and they deny it. And they do the, well, I never. That's Meghan Markle. Deny, deny, deflect, deny. We all know she lies. She's being sued right now for lying from her sister, Samantha Markle. She lied with Omid Scobie. I mean, it just goes on and on. The negative smear campaign against the royal family. So she wonders why people don't like her. It is not because you think you're ambitious. It's because you're a bully. It's because you're not a nice person. Because you're full of it. You're full of lies. So this whole podcast, if I wouldn't have known anything about Meghan, I might have fallen for her crocodile tears. But honestly, it was so bad. I tried really hard to listen to the message. She didn't really get to the point, in my opinion, the misconception of ambition. She literally just gushed over her friendship with Serena Williams and how brave and wonderful Serena Williams is because she's giving up a life of tennis to be a mom. Okay, I mean, I get it. It was her career, but again, there are so many women out there who have it 1,000 times harder. Women in the military, women who work 2 jobs, trying to get an education, women who can't give up their job, don't have nannies and cooks and millions of dollars. It just didn't do it for me. It didn't pull on my heartstrings. I didn't feel sorry. I didn't fall in love with Serena Williams because she grew up in Compton. I'm sorry, it just didn't do it for me. And then Meghan was just gushing over how her and H helped shape Serena. Again, I felt like she was really trying hard to get this feminist message apart and how women, we could just grow together and reach this, break the ceiling. It's limitless. We're so powerful. But when you forget how you got there, Meghan, and what you've done to people to get there, it kind of falls on flat ears. So it was this women empowerment message from a woman who doesn't empower women. And here's another doozy. So she lets it drop in the podcast how when Harry and Meghan were in Africa, supposedly the nursery where Archie was staying caught on fire. Now this story has, as far as I know, has never made it out in the public. So she tells this little story of how the nanny took Archie downstairs and somehow when they were staying in South Africa, the room caught on fire because of the heater. Okay, and there was no smoke detector. Somebody put it out. And how she just had to keep on moving because it didn't look good for her to cancel and they couldn't tell people what happened. Okay, so 3 years, no one finds out about it? Really? 4 years actually, no one finds out about it. And here's the hilarious thing. And the assistants were running out of the room crying because of what happened to Archie. And I'm like, you sure they weren't running because of flying teacups and saucers that were at their head? Is this Meghan's way of saying, well, this is why the staff was crying? They weren't crying because I'm evil. They're crying because, you know, there was a little fire that might have taken out little Archie that no one ever heard about or saw. And that's why they were crying. It wasn't because I was throwing hot tea in their face. The way she tells the story with no enthusiasm, it reminds me of the miscarriage story. I'm sorry, I don't believe she had a miscarriage. She told the miscarriage story with so much detail, and then it came out later that she stole some of the narrative from someone else's story. You know, and she did it around the time of Chrissy Teigen, when Chrissy Teigen had her stillbirth and was getting all this sympathy. Meghan thought, oh, I'm going to try that, and they're going to fall in love with me and feel sorry for me. Meghan's always trying to pull on the heartstrings of people so people will like her, because we don't like her because we know what she does. But it doesn't work because she's very unauthentic. And she's trying real hard to come out as this sweet little feminist. And I'm just a ambitious woman. And I'm just a mom. And I'm so nice. And me and H, we don't know why people don't like us. Ugh, seriously. So the little story that she tells about how the smoke alarm didn't go off. And then thankfully the nanny was downstairs because she had to get a snack with little Archie. And then the guy came in and he took the fire out. And we didn't say a word. This was the exact same trip, I believe, where she looks at the camera and says, but nobody asked about me. Nobody asked how I'm doing. Doesn't look like a very concerned mother to me. Who's worried that her child just almost lost his life. But the way she tells the story, y'all, it was so unbelievable. Just can't. She's like, I was given a speech, and after I gave the speech, they said, oh, by the way, the house is on fire. And she's like, what? What? The house is on fire? What? And we had to keep going. I'm like, even Oprah was like, what? Like, she was just so bland when she tells the story that I don't believe it actually happened. That's why I wasn't in the press, because it never happened. Again, I believe Meghan believes these lies to be her new truth. And that's my opinion. But I honestly do not believe this happened. I do not believe the miscarriage happened. I'm sorry, I don't. There's just too much misconception, smoke and mirrors with this couple. Everything's a freaking secret. They won't even tell you the actual date and time that Archie was born. There was a lot of weirdness when that happened, when he was born, and now people think it was like 2 weeks before. Again, they don't tell you simple stuff, but then she's going to tell you a miscarriage? Nah. Yeah, well, I don't know who the godparents are of Archie. You know what I mean? It's just weird. This whole podcast was kind of just Meghan gushing about her friend Serena and how they talk on the phone and how she talks to H, and the whole thing about her giving up tennis to be a mom. That was literally the whole podcast. Nothing. No huge bombshells besides this nursery fire that we've never heard about that may or may not have happened. And Meghan talking about her being a superhero with Procter & Gamble. So pretty much there was nothing really exciting at all about the podcast. So that's all I got out of this podcast, really. I think it was produced very well. So kudos to her team. And she signs off with Meghan. She calls herself Meghan. So again, I don't know if she's trying to separate herself from the Duchess of Sussex, but she's definitely trying to be Meghan. I guess that's the new branding that she's doing for her political career. But again, people don't have a problem with ambitious women. They have a problem with mean, manipulative, bitchy women who use and discard people for their personal use. That is what people have a problem with, Meghan. It's not ambition. But again, she married into a royal family and wanted to be a feminist and a political superhero with the royal title, and you just can't do that. This whole thing, if I didn't know about Meghan, I might have believed some of it. So as far as I'm concerned, Archetype, I don't think it's going to do extremely well. I think after 2 or 3 episodes, nobody wants to hear from Mariah Carey and Serena Williams. I'm sorry. A bunch of elite women crying about how they're put in a box. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. If you're planning to listen to the Archetype podcast, leave me your comments, guys, down below. As always, I appreciate you being here. Make sure you check out all of my other social media accounts and be sure to check out my Patreon. I do have a Patreon membership that is only $3 a month. So if you would be interested in joining, the link will be down below. As always, I appreciate you and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.